Good morning and welcome to the Saturday Sampler class. I'm going to wait a few minutes to let people come in so we can get started. Hi Lynn. Happy Thanksgiving back to you as well. It's always nice to see your little tiny photo in the chat box. Appreciate you hanging in there with us. All right. This morning we're going to be looking at William Tell, but before that gets started, there's a number of things that I would like to share with you. And that is right now on the Quilt Show from the store, they're having a 30% off sale on the internet, and it's almost everything in the store. The only thing that is not on sale at this time is Block of the Month and anything that was already on sale that's in the sale department and the membership. Otherwise, everything in the store is 30% off. So if you've been wanting or dreaming of having something, or you'd like to share it with your family as a Christmas gift or something, now's the time to get that while they have their 30% off cyber sale going on. So don't miss that. So tune into the Quilt Show, and you don't have to necessarily be a member to go in and shop. Just go to the website, thequiltshow.com, and click under shop, and you're set to go. And so I always look at the threads, and if there's a new ruler that I must have on that. So all right, today is William Tell, and we're going to go through a few things that we've already kind of approached, but for those who are new coming in, and I know that we have a few new people that pop in to see what we're all about every week, and so let's take a look at the pattern. This is the quilt, and it's made up of basically 2 blocks and a border. The 2 blocks this is one of the blocks, and just to note, if you haven't looked at it or read it, there is sashing between on the outside and this on the one block, and then these 3 are the second block, and you have a small one and 2 large ones with sashing in between the arrows. So just to keep that in mind as we're looking at what we're doing. I'm going to show you a finished large one, and then today we're going to finish up a smaller one that I started and get you to working on that. So let me move that out of the way for now. So that I can see it, but there, I wasn't wanting to balance. So this is the one that I made. It's a larger one in the picture, and as you can tell, again, it is made up of these half square triangles, and we're going to talk a little bit about how she makes those half square triangles, and then how you might make them as well. And then we want to talk about the arrow shaft. So that is the large one. I'm going to set that one aside for now. And then I started the smaller one, and it is going to have these squares, and it's just squares sewn together, so I didn't feel that I needed to share that with you. And then we're going to put the arrow on the top, and again, those are half square triangles. And want to talk just a little bit about those half square triangles. She has you do method 2 in her book. I think it's on around page 19 or something in your pattern, or in the book, whichever you have. So her method of doing this is cutting the squares, and then you sew directly down the middle. So say this was a 2.5 inch square, or you want it's unfinished at 2.5. So you've cut a 2.5-inch square, and you're going to sew down that line through the center, and then you're going to trim it off on one side or the other, and you will end up with a 2.5 unfinished square. But as we know, there is a magic number to this, and I want to share that magic number with you before we sew these two together. And the magic number is, if you need a square to end at 2 inches, you would add the magic number of 7/8. So you would cut your square at 7/8, and you would, if you want to do that, you draw a line down the center, but you sew on either side, and then you have 2 half square triangles. This way you only get 1, and you have these leftover triangles. Now I'm going to use these in another project, and so they're not going to go to waste, but for here you can look at them either way. So for example, if you want something to finish at a 3-inch square, you're going to cut your squares at 3 7/8. I usually go up to 4, simply so I have a little bit to trim. With this method, I haven't found that you really need to trim on that, so that's good. And if you need a lot of them, you have the Simply Stars paper, or the Star Singles paper, that I really love so well. So let's jump into making 2 of these squares the way that she shares in the book, just so that this is another option for you, because we have a number of options with what we sew and what we make, and I always look for excuse me, my foot pedal ran away on me. So again, I'm going to simply sew down that line. And if you have the Sew Steady mat on your machine, as I do, I'm going to show you how you don't necessarily need to draw those lines. And so here's my other square, and as you see, I don't have a line, but I'm lining it up on my Sew Steady mat directly on the center line, and I don't have to move it over, and all I need to worry about is keeping my point. If you can see, I think you can see that now. I just want to keep my point right there on that center line, and that way I don't have to necessarily mark it. But I did on the first one so that you could see what I was doing. And this is one of those tools that I am so glad that I have. All right. So now I have both of my squares sewn down the middle. So basically I'm going to put my ruler on my sewn line at on the 1/4 inch, and then I am going to trim that off, hang on to that side of it, and I think I need to change the blade. All right, so as we're pressing these, the one thing that I found is that if I pressed one to the dark side so that they would butt up to each other, I needed to, so I'm going to set my seam, run my iron along the edge, and then just set it. Then the second one, I'm going to go the opposite direction. And so even though the directions say to press to the dark side, I was finding that they weren't butted up unless I ironed them open. I'm not a huge fan of always opening my seams, so I simply press them the opposite direction, because once the batting is in and you've quilted it, you don't necessarily see the dark print on that. So my squares came out, you know, I don't have to do any trimming or anything with that method. I simply just have all of those pieces left over. So now I want to put these so that I have my, it looks like a large flying geese. And to be honest with you, you can also, I don't see why you couldn't do these as flying geese. Because if you know you want it to end, let's say 6 inches by 3 inches finished, you would cut your arrow part to 3.5 by 6.5. And then for the edges, that again is that adding 7/8. So if your block is going to end at width of 3 inches when it's finished inside, you would cut that at 3 7/8, and then you would have your side pieces, and you can do it as 4 at a time or 1 at a time. So there are some options for you. All right. So now this way I can butt these seams up with each other. And another little tip for me on this is that I want to make sure that this end and this end both butt up so that they're even across the top when I get to that point. All right, so let's sew this one together. And again, we're gonna press this open. And here I'm gonna go with what I'm doing here, because this is where I'm gonna sew it. So I have pressed that one to the left. Let me get in the camera. I've pressed this seam to the left, so I want to make sure that this seam is pressed to the right so that I can butt them up against each other. So I'm gonna set my threads, run that along the seam, and press. So now I'm gonna sew this across, and simply because I don't want that center to move at all, I pin on the top right side and come out on the left side so that I can sew directly up to the seam as I'm sewing before I remove the pin. And I don't have these, you can see how a pin leaves a little gap or a hump there, and that just, for me, it avoids that, and I rarely miss that mark when I pin like that. But you have to, again, it's another option. You can give it a try to see if you like it. If you do, great. If you have your own method and it works well for you, use it, whichever way you want to go. So now I sewed right into that first seam, and now I'm lining up this side. I can pull that pin because I've sewn right into the seam line. Alright, and now I'm going to press this, and I'm pressing to the top. Want to set those threads. It does, when you're setting the threads, it makes pressing that just a tad easier. So I've got that part completed, and now I want to complete this part. And as you're choosing fabrics, one of the things that you'll notice, and I'll show it again when I get this one sewed. All right. And then I'll check the questions and see if you had any questions or comments in there. If you do have a question, please put it in the chat box. I try to get to all of them. I know that after class I'll notice that I might have missed one or so. And you can also, if you're on YouTube, you can write your questions on, in the YouTube, and I try to get back and answer them for you. And of course the forum is always there. Questions can go in the forum, and that way others can answer. Because we all do things a little bit differently, and I learn a lot from you guys as well. And again, I'm going to press this to the top in that direction, so they're all pressed the same way. All right, so now we have our arrow, and with the fabrics she has in the book, you kind of start with your dark one, and it goes from dark, medium, light, as best as you can. I'm using this one pack of fabrics, so they tend to have most in the medium range. So what I'm going for is texture, and so changing from a dark color with either a lot of texture or a little bit, the next one opposite of that, and then I try to throw in some geometrics in there just so that the fabrics show each time. Let me see if there's any questions. I don't see any right now, so but I just saw we had somebody pop in, Joanne from Holland, Michigan. I love that town. It was so pretty, especially in the spring with the tulips. All right, now for this shaft that goes in here, you can certainly use a bias tape maker and sew that down with a bias tape maker. But I have some quick bias tape from Clover, and we used this in another project that we had a while back, and so I still have it, and it's just really the right size. It's a 1/4 inch width bias tape, and what makes this so wonderful is that it's already it's already got the the sticky stuff on the back. So simply what I did is make sure that I get that right in. This certainly made this whole process so much easier. And then I'm going to stick this down at the top while it's there, and then I can bring this, and I really want to keep it right on. So I take this slow, and I do a section at a time, and the reason that I do that is just to keep it straight. And when I get to this point where I want to cut that, I can get that right on the point of my arrow, and I simply clip that off. And this was used in a stained glass project that we had, but I have found a number of uses for this quick bias fusible bias tape, and I think it works really well for this. And then when the quilt is being quilted, you can also, give it an extra stitch down or whatever. So that is our arrow block, or the skinnier one. You have the larger one, and then again, to show you in the book the picture, you're going to put, for block number 1, you're going to have a larger block and a skinny block with sashing on either side. And then for your second block in the row, you're going to have a skinny with sashing, a fatter one with sashing, and then another fat one, and you have some sashing there as well. And so you're doing 2 blocks there and 2 blocks here going in a different direction. And then you have the smaller one going around the outside of the quilt for your border. So, any other questions? Glad you made it, Kathy. All right. So, I will see you in 2 weeks for our next quilt that we're going to do. And it is going to be the windows in my baby's room. And this one right here, it's going to see how we can do a cathedral window easy way, and or at least a quicker way with that. And so I'm looking forward to doing that one. I think that could make for a very pretty little baby's quilt, or just a pretty quilt, no matter for whom it is. And so we have our large blocks, our small blocks in the corners, and we'll learn how to put that together. And then our last quilt that we're going to do in the book is the packages, boxes, and bows after we finish this. So we'll see you after Thanksgiving, that first week in December. I think it's December 6th, I think, or 5th, 4th, 5th, 6th. Maybe it's the 6th of December. And then the following week on the 13th, I think, is going to be packages, boxes, and bows. And then we'll finish up with something else. Please, if you have, if you can, it would be wonderful if you would send me pictures on divinequilts@gmail.com. It's there on your screen. That would be great. I'll put them up each week so that you can see what others are doing, and it doesn't matter if it's this week's picture or not. Whatever you're working on, share it with us. The other place that you can share it is on Instagram at #DSaturdaySampler, and get some pictures up there of yours, and then of course use the forum. And so let me, before I go, I just want to make sure that I'm not answering your questions. All right, I don't see any questions for that, and so we're getting close to that. I hope that this was, that you got something from this. Just have a wonderful, wonderful week, whatever you're going to be doing. Be safe as you travel, and happy Thanksgiving. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.